Hey guys, this is Rob, and this video is to talk you through how to update the Conqueror Upgrade and Conqueror Edition screens. Each screen has its own set of files. This diagram here kind of shows what the default images are, which these are similar for the black and white as well as the color. Basically, screen 1 is this row here, screen 2, screen 3, and screen 4. And then each screen has 6 video files. The first is for the static animation. The second is triggered when Destruction Jackpot is active. The next is when the UFO goes up based on the saucer light. The next is Rodan 2X, when the Rodan is either available to be selected or running. Heat Ray is the center spinner. And then as you activate each monster monitor by collecting tanks, fighting the battle, playing the bridge mode and playing the Tesla mode, those light up. So basically I've got a card inserted now, so I'm going to open that card up, and you'll see that card has the images that I just showed you. This is the black and white static, Destruction Jackpot. They're numbered in order of that diagram that I just showed you, and then included in each card is a document that says the screen number on it for your convenience when you put it in, and then a link to our GIF resource page. So the link here goes to teppinball.com/gzgif, and this is going to be where you're going to find all the most useful links for updating your cards, including the ability to download the original GIF file. So if you have any issues at all, you can click on this link, and in these folders is all the files. So if I come in here to screen 1, which is tank, you'll see those same files that we just talked through, which you can re-download. If you happen to damage an SD card, here's a link to buy another one. But most importantly, there's really like 2 main websites that you're going to want to reference for files. So first is this app called EasyGIF, which is a website for editing GIFs. And then really GIFs can be found anywhere. This is a Giphy. If I type in Godzilla, you'll be able to find all sorts of great stuff. For this particular demo, I'm going to use this SpongeBob GIF. So I'm going to right click and say Save As, and then I'm just going to save that to my desktop. And I think now we'll see. Yeah, so there's also a file format called WebP, which I'm not particularly familiar with, but it seems to work just the same as a GIF. You can actually start from any video file. It's really just the export of the file that you're focused on. So if I come here to EasyGIF and I click on Video to GIF, basically I upload, again, any file. A super long file is probably going to create problems with this system. I mean, it generally needs to be short, but I'm going to click Open, and then it loads the file, and then click Upload Video. So the way this website works is it can be confusing at first, because basically any changes you make are done via these buttons, and then the result only happens after you click Make a GIF. So when you upload a file, you're going to typically see this frame view, which shows the frames that the GIF kind of cycles through. It's basically like a flip book, how long they're delayed, and then you have the ability to skip these. So the key thing with our system is that each screen has its own computer, and each computer has its own memory limitations, and that ultimately results in a situation where the total of all of the GIF files can only equal no more than 2.5 megabytes. And it's actually probably a little bit less than 2.5. In that 2 to 2.4 range is safe. So if I highlight all the files and see what the total of those files is, you'll see it's around 2.3 megabytes. If it goes over 2.5 and even hits 2.5, the system will not load the assets. It cannot handle that much data. So a key thing about these GIFs is that they have to be small. This one's 805, which is on the large size. You certainly cannot have 6 of these. There's 805. If you look at these, 805, 387, 340, 62. This one's very small. It's actually just a couple frames of animation. 430 and 311. So let's load up a couple of those GIFs here real quick, so you guys can just see kind of what those are comprised of. Let's start with the static one, which is 805 kilobytes. And when I load that up, you'll see it's quite a few frames of animation. If I come here to the bottom, actually, if I click make GIF, it'll give me some data on it. So look, it's around 72 frames, which is quite large. This one became unoptimized once I uploaded it. We'll get into that shortly. Now, if I bring up the Rodan, which you'll see is 62 kilobytes, you'll see that once I click upload, it's way less frames, and ultimately just a much smaller file. And the thing about GIFs is that you don't actually need all of the frames look good, and therefore you can reduce file size. So let's go back to that animation of SpongeBob. I just uploaded the file, and I'm going to turn it into a GIF, and you'll see that we're sitting at 1.4 megabytes, which is way too big, and it's across 19 frames. But before we get into optimizing it for size, we need to file size. We need to optimize it for image size. So the images and the screens for the Conqueror upgrade are 320 by 240. So you have to crop this down to be the right size, but before you're smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by basically reducing the height down to 240. So if I click resize and I type 240, which is the maximum height, and click resize, you'll see now we're at 334 by 240, but we need to get down to 320 by 240, and it does ideally need to be that exact size. So now that we've resized it to one of the constraints, we want to crop it to the other constraint. So if I click crop, you'll see the interface now gives me this bounding box, and this bounding box size is down here. I can drag this. If I drag it to the max, of course it's going to be this larger one. Now I can come in here and type in 320, and I believe, well, or we can drag it this way down to 320. So basically you'll see this box is kind of showing me what ultimately the result is going to be, and that's going to be the result across all the frames. So no matter what we do, we want to get it to 320 by 240. So the maximum is going to be 240 since that's the size of the image we just did. Now I'm going to slide this out to 320 and then just try to center it. Now you could move it off to the side, but I'm liking how this looks because I got the entire rainbow in there. And now I'm going to click crop image. So now we have a file size. It's a little bit smaller, but most importantly for right now, it's 320 by 240. So how do we get it now smaller? Because as I said, like about the average size you're going to want across the 6 files is around, 200 to 300 kilobytes. So what I can do is I can click on optimize. And when I do that, it gives me some initial options. One is to turn it to a lossy GIF, which I don't fully know what that means, but it does reduce the file size and it doesn't change how it looks. The other is color reduction, and then the other is removing of frames. And you can do these one at a time. So I'm going to start with this lossy GIF, 35 compression, and I note that it's 0.97. And if I look at this, it's now 597. And just visually speaking, it looks pretty darn good to me. 597 could be small enough, but it really depends on the other files that you're editing. So each file you want to try to get them down to the most to the smallest size you can. So let's try another option, which is optimize, and we're going to do remove every 4th frame. So this is going to take the 19 frames down to about 25% smaller. And I want to see what that looks like. So by removing every 4th frame, we're now down to 15 frames. We've reduced the file size by a little bit, and it still looks pretty good. Now, you don't have to commit and move on. The way you would commit and move on is you click optimize again down here. But if you don't like what you did and you want to try a different option, let's say we want to remove every 2nd frame, which reduces the frames from 19 down to 10, we can kind of decide, if we still like this. So you can see if you compare these two, there's definitely a little bit of a difference. This is way less frames, but it's also more in that size that we're looking for. I kind of feel like this is a little bit too sporadic. So I'm going to try every third frame and click optimize. And now you'll see there's a little bit more movement. We're at 430. So let's say, we like that size. At that point, you can go into frames and actually like look at each individual frame. And you can click skip if you want to like eliminate a frame that you think is unnecessary. So, and you can duplicate frames. So I think this is looking pretty good. I feel like maybe this one we don't need, and this one, and I can click make GIF, and now I can see what the result is. You'll see now it went from, well, the information isn't there, but it would have changed size a little bit. You can also change the delay of the frames. I don't necessarily recommend these frames being different delays, but you can do that. So now that we've got the size we want, we've got the file size we want, we can click save. And now, for my purposes, I'm just going to save this to the desktop and call it SpongeBob 1. You could always now come in and re-upload that same file and reduce it further if you'd like. So kind of keep that in mind as you work through this. You can do that. So for adding SpongeBob now to our system, really what's critical here is that when you add it, the file name is exactly the same name, capitalization, underscores, so on and so forth. And the best way I like to do this, let's say that we wanted that to be in there for heat ray. I like to kind of copy the entire file name, and then I come over here and I basically replace the entire file name here, and then I'll drag it onto the file, onto the card, and say replace. So now, in theory, when we go to upload this, the heat ray, instead of showing what I just showed you, would show SpongeBob. I'm going to look at all the files. All 6 files together is around 2.3 megabytes, and that should work out fine. Now, the thing to note is that if you want something different on every screen, it's still the same process. I'm going to go ahead and eject this card, and I do recommend you always eject the card before you make a change. And I'm going to put in card number 2, which is RAID, and give it a second and it'll load up. So here's card number 2, the RAID, and you'll see there's this notes file, so that'll tell you which one you have. And now let's say that we wanted on the second screen for the Destruction Jackpot to show a different SpongeBob file. So let's try this one. We're going to go through this process one more time just so you guys can see. Actually, let's do it with a wide graphic. So let's do this one right here. I'm going to save this image, and now I'm going to go back to Easy GIF, and I'm going to upload this. And you'll see just because it's wide to start doesn't mean we can't use it. So the first step is to turn that into a GIF, and you'll see the height is 200 by 490. So this one's going to be an issue because its height doesn't actually achieve 240. So in some ways, this file is kind of unusable. You would stretch it out, or it just wouldn't look good. So that's something to kind of keep an eye out for. This one looks like it's probably good. So we'll save that to the desktop and upload this file. And make it a GIF. So you'll see this one is 370 high by 600 wide. So it's too big for the file. Again, the first thing you want to do is resize, and you want to pick the smaller number in terms of which one, because if we change 600 to 320, the height's now too small. So we basically want to change the height. In most cases, it's going to be change the height first to the number. That leaves it too wide. Now we can click resize. Click crop, and we'll max out the height, and then change the width to 320 just by simply dragging it over, and then pick where we want to fit. So I want to get his heat ray in here a little bit more than his body. So I'm going to actually go all the way to the right. So I click crop. Now we'll see. I'm just going to go ahead and do the lossy GIF. So that takes it down a little bit. It looks pretty good. Now I'm going to optimize by removing every third frame, which is kind of a happy medium between 2 and 4. And now we're at 284. So I'm going to go ahead and save this to my desktop. And we'll call it Godzilla 1. And now if we want this to be for the heat ray, so I'm going to copy that entire file name, including the end part, the GIF, and I'm going to paste that. Oh, we already have a file named that, so I'm going to have to... Another option is... you just drag this file onto the card and then copy the name, then delete the file, because it is okay to have files with other names on there. Just ultimately, before you eject it, you want to have the right names. So we've now updated our first 2 screens. The first screen should show SpongeBob, and then the second screen will show Godzilla breathing heat like this. So I'm going to go ahead and eject that card, and now let's give it a shot. All right, so I've got the 2 cards that I just updated, and I've got the topper fired up here. And what you're going to start with is you're going to unplug the cable right here. And now we'll take card number 1, and you're going to turn it this way and slide it into the slot. If you need to, you may need to move that wire back a little bit. Here it is, here. Just take the card, slide it in. So now with the card loaded, we can plug the power back in. So for the first 30 to 60 seconds, depending on the file size, you're going to get this blank screen. There is a slight flicker. It's a little hard to see. You'll see these other 2 screens that we didn't put the card in are working as normal. So let's give that a minute. So as soon as they load, and they'll load at different paces, you should start to see your updated files. So we did see a slight flicker there. So now if we let this go in attract mode, eventually we'll see a couple graphics show up that we uploaded, both SpongeBob and Godzilla. So now we'll see that for screens 1 and 2, we have different graphics playing for heat ray. And it's as easy as that to update the screens. Another thing to do is you want to evaluate these GIFs, on the screens. If you're not necessarily happy with how they look on your computer, that doesn't mean they're not going to look good up here on these smaller screens. So keep that in mind as you edit your files. You can remove these cards while it's powered on. You will want to remove them because otherwise, every time you turn on your topper, there'll be that pretty long delay as the files load up. But now, as we turn on and off the topper, those files will be ready to go. So one more thing, guys, this software is open source, so if you want to make changes to the code on your topper, you can. This logic chip, which you inserted, can be connected to a PC via a USB-C cable, and you can download our software via GitHub and make changes to it. So one thing we didn't do was add a video specifically for the animation when all 4 monster monitors are lit. On the topper, it does a light show in rainbow, but there is no graphic file for it. So if anybody wants to give that a shot, hit this link to download the Conqueror upgrade software, CU, open up Arduino, and make some changes and upload it to the file and see what happens. And we'd love to see anybody share that. So check it out, guys. Totally open to anything anybody wants to do. You're still going to be constrained by that 8 megabyte and ultimately 2.5 megabyte file size, but if you keep those GIFs small, you should be able to add a lot more animations based on other scenarios that the Topper creates. So check it out.